Welcome to the Healthcare Provider Happy Hour. This is a safe space where we invite healthcare providers to unapologetically be themselves after the working day. My name is Jennifer George, and each week I will connect you with guests and stories that will help transform your stress to success and fulfillment. Are you with me? Grab your drink of choice and let's chat. Hey everyone, welcome to the Healthcare Provider Happy Hour. I'm your host, Jennifer George, and I'm joining you today to chat with you a little bit about healthcare provider guilt. Now, I don't fully understand this, but I do know and I do believe that it exists in healthcare providers, and I do believe that it is one of the reasons for healthcare provider burnout and mental health issues and suicide, addictions, things like that. You know, we're going through a global pandemic right now, and while some people are seeing the end of it, you know, there are some things that are lending us to believe that there's another wave coming. And when I think of healthcare providers who have been on the front lines, not fully understanding this virus and not fully able to protect ourselves and our patients, it can lend ourselves towards feeling guilty. And not only that, but even for providers who have struggled with being fearless on the front lines or feeling heroic on the front lines or having to take time off or even leaving the profession altogether, and that sense of abandonment of your practice and of your team can also lead you towards feeling guilty. You know, a few years ago, I never really realized that this feeling existed until I was chatting with a physician, and it was after working hours. I was still at work, and we were talking about a patient situation. A patient had just newly arrived, and I believe it was a young patient who had a terminal illness, and I hadn't yet seen them, and I was going to see them the next day. And I remember the physician saying to me, you know, it's different for you, Jen, because you get to go home at the end of the day. And I'm going to say I can stand here now and sit here now and say that what he had said was unwarranted because he did not know my sense of integrity, did not know my sense of values, and didn't know who I was as a professional and how much I give to the profession of healthcare as it is. And at the time, I left feeling guilty. I left feeling guilty after that interaction. And feeling guilty, really, if you look it up, the definition actually means a sense of shame or wrongdoing for something that is based on like breaking the law, something factual. But what healthcare provider guilt really is it's like an emotion that we feel. It's an internal conflict that we feel that might not be warranted on actual facts. You know, very few cases in this case that I'm speaking about are based truly on just malpractice and actual malpractice. I'm talking about this feeling, this emotion that we're feeling when things rationally are not within our control that might happen, that might lead us to feeling guilty unnecessarily. And this in itself is actually a form of self-punishment. And why do we do this? And there was an article that was posted on Psychology Today from 2019. This is not an area of research that is really well known or done, but is a big contributor, in my opinion, to burnout, and is one of the reasons why burnout will continue to persist. And until we addressed the needs of professionals and understanding what triggers this and how we can alleviate it, only then can we help minimize this factor as it contributes to burnout and depression and things like suicide. So one of the things that this article said, which I found interesting, and it goes into detail about the psychotherapy, which I don't fully understand, but part of it was that a lot of healthcare professionals perhaps get into medicine and healthcare because of an unconscious need to appease or alleviate rather guilt. And so going into a profession where you're doing good helps to alleviate guilt that maybe you experienced in your childhood or you experienced at another time in your life. And this internal feeling matched with an external trigger. So like I said, that conversation maybe with the physician is what actually brings that out. And, there's many experiences where healthcare providers can feel guilty, right? So like I mentioned, not being there for your team, or feeling like you're not, rather, or not being able to fully protect your patients, even when it's beyond your control. That's another thing. Or not wanting to burden other people and not asking for help. That's another thing too. And then you internalize that as well. Those are all kind of reasons why we wax and wane in this feeling. And so some of the things that they proposed in this article that might help is to first discover why you got into healthcare to begin with. Ask yourself why you got into healthcare. Another thing is, what have your experiences to date been like? Have they been positive? Have they been flooded with guilt? What have your emotions been like through this whole journey? Another thing is, where are you drawing punishment from? Where are you drawing? In other words, I think this is like, what are your triggers? What triggers you to feel guilty? And one of the things that triggers me to feel guilty is when other people think that I don't give enough, right? Because I'm already hard on myself, right? But when somebody else actually says you're not doing enough, that's definitely going to trigger guilt within me for whatever reason. So that's one of the things that trigger it within me. Or another thing for me is, feeling like if I go on vacation, feeling like I'm abandoning my patients, abandoning the team. And in reality, that is my sense of, I've thought about this over the years, and really that is my own sense of needing to control, I guess, right? And recognizing that I'm not the end all be all to people's well-being, that I'm just a part of the team. I'm just a part of that situation. I'm just a piece of it. I'm not all of it. And learning to let that go and knowing that people will be okay without me for a bit of time. Another thing that I think is powerful in helping to alleviate healthcare provider guilt is talking about it and having rounds about it. I think that in healthcare, because we continually go through the motions and we're helping one person after another, we don't have enough time to process the events of certain things. And then what ends up happening is we, again, internalize things, and then it triggers again later on, and it creates a bigger conflict than it would have had we dealt with it at the first time, right? So I'm a big proponent of Schwartz rounds. I think that's awesome. And not every facility can do Schwartz rounds because it is quite a big event where people, where providers actually, so there's like a panel of providers who get together and they share a reflective experience and how it, caused them to learn something new or how they felt through it, something challenging, maybe something joyful, whatever it might be, that other people can also relate to and learn from. So there's also an audience there, and everybody shares their experiences based on their role in the situation. And it's basically a time to reflect, to give time to that situation that it deserved, to hold space for that, but also to recognize that you're not alone. So my purpose in sharing this podcast with you today on healthcare provider guilt is to help you recognize that you're not alone. I put this poll up on Instagram about whether healthcare providers do experience guilt from time to time, and 100% of you, it was an overwhelming response, did respond to this poll, and that's why I'm putting this podcast out, to let you know that you're not alone, that this is not actually that well understood, and it's all the more reason to talk more about it so that we don't give all of the power to it. Oftentimes, that guilt is bigger than it truly is, right? Because it's magnified when we don't talk about it or we don't express it in some way or work through it in some way. So let me know what you think. If you've experienced healthcare provider guilt, in what circumstances have you experienced it in? How did you move through it? And how did you navigate your way and kind of get over it? It's something that I think that will come up time and time again because we're only human beings. We're not perfect. We're not heroes in that impossible standard kind of way. So we are going to experience different emotions as it pertains to our practice and our purpose for practicing. So until we chat next time, remember to stay well and to stay happy. So if you guys like this podcast, please subscribe and leave an honest review. Your feedback means everything to me. Your reviews are what moves this podcast forward, and I always appreciate receiving them. If you want to get a hold of me directly, reach out to me on social media. My handles are in the show notes, and you can always subscribe to my weekly newsletters at jennifergeorge.co so that we can stay connected. So until next time, thank you guys so much again for your ongoing support.